An ancient civilization claimed their king lived 28,800 years, and that was clearly engraved on a 4,000-year-old stone tablet. Not a myth, but a fact. Sounds like science fiction. No, this is actual history. A dusty and haunting chapter that even the most brilliant archaeologists have yet to explain. Welcome to Sumer, humanity's first civilization where writing was invented, law was born, and colossal temple towers stretched toward the heavens as if to touch the gods. A civilization that appeared suddenly with no prior developmental trace, bringing with it a strange language, an intricately organized society, an astronomical and mathematical knowledge far ahead of its time. They came like a storm and then vanished without a trace. Who were they really? Let's delve into the 10 greatest mysteries of the Sumerian civilization, enigmas that have baffled scientists for centuries. This is not just a story about artifacts or cuneiform tablets. This is a journey into a labyrinth of truth and myth, where humans, gods, and the unexplainable blur all boundaries. From the grand ziggurat of Ur, believed to be a bridge between heaven and earth, to the Sumerian king list, which recorded dynasties that ruled for 28,800 years, and a great flood clearly mentioned. Sound familiar? Could it be that what we call myths are actually memories of a truth buried by time? We'll explore mysteries about Queen Kubaba, the only woman to ever rule among a sea of god kings, about Sumerian seals depicting beings that resemble aliens, and the Anunnaki, those who came from the skies. And now, let us step into the dust of time. We begin with the first mystery, the Ziggurat of Ur, a massive structure lying motionless in the desert like a whisper from the heavens of old. Part 1. The Ziggurat of Ur, the heavenly gateway of the gods. Around 2100 BCE, in the heart of ancient Ur, the center of the Sumerian civilization, a monumental structure began to rise from the dust of Mesopotamia. This was the Ziggurat of Ur, initiated by King Ur-Nammu and completed by his son, King Shulgi. This was more than just an architectural feat. It was a cultural declaration where humans sought to reach the divine through mud brick stairways. The ziggurat measured 64 meters long, 46 meters wide, with its actual height still a mystery due to the loss of its upper levels over time. Winding staircases circled the tower leading to the highest level, which the Sumerians believed to be the dwelling of the moon god, Nana. This sacred place was not just for prayer. It was designed for rituals, astronomical ceremonies, and possibly as the city's spiritual power center. But what makes it an eternal mystery, even as its brick walls have eroded with time? The top of the ziggurat housed a small sanctuary, a space where only the chosen few could enter. There, a strictly selected young woman would live as the consort of the god, Nana, serving him in divine silence throughout the year. On another side of the structure, archaeologists found kitchens, storage rooms, and ceremonial areas, remnants of a fully functional ritual system. Some scholars suggest it was a model of the cosmic mountain, the axis linking heaven and earth, allowing gods to descend to the mortal world. But more strangely, the ziggurat structure aligns with astronomical phenomena. Certain staircases and inclines match the moon's position during solstices. Did the Sumerians truly understand cosmic cycles? Or were they simply replicating something they had been instructed to do? A theory proposes that the ziggurat was a resonant energy structure, a converter between the visible and invisible worlds, placed at the center of celestial energy flows. Today, even with only its base layers and faded body remaining, the Ziggurat of Ur still stands as a whisper from the past. Excavation and restoration efforts have brought it back to light. But the more we study, the more we are captivated by its mysterious silence. Was it an astronomical observatory, a ritual temple, a gateway to the divine, or a remnant of ancient interaction between humans and an extraterrestrial intelligence? The truth remains buried beneath Mesopotamian soil. And if the ziggurat symbolized divine order, then perhaps the Sumerians left their clearest clue in an old yet strange text. A list where time stretches into the surreal, where kings reigned for tens of thousands of years. Let us now enter a mystery that sends chills down the spines of even modern historians. Part 2. The Sumerian King List, the Game of Immortals. In the early 20th century, at the ancient city of Nippur, archaeologists discovered a clay tablet inscribed with strange cuneiform characters. Initially thought to be an administrative record, this tablet revealed a stunning detail that shocked historians, a list of Sumerian kings from before the Great Flood to long after. This tablet, later named the Sumerian King List, not only recorded names but also specified the length of each reign. And this is where the strangeness begins. The earliest kings were said to have ruled for tens of thousands of years. Alulim, the first king, ruled for 800 years. Alaljar, his successor, reigned for 36,000 years. These numbers defy all biological and historical logic. Some scholars argue these years are symbolic. But symbolic of what? Of permanence, or of an immortal race that once existed on Earth? What makes the list truly frightening is its consistency. There isn't just one copy. At least 18 versions have been discovered with similar content, and sometimes even further elaborations. Among them, the well-blundelled prism now displayed at the Oxford Museum is the most complete version, covering from pre-flood dynasties to the final king of the Ison dynasty. The list states that kingship descended from heaven at Eridug, then passed through cities like Bad Tibera, Larak, and Shurupak. Then came the Great Flood. After that, kingship descended again, starting a new cycle with rulers living more normal lifespans. The striking parallels with Genesis in the Bible make many doubt this is mere coincidence. Could the list reflect a civilization with a different understanding of time, or, more boldly, a preserved memory of non-terrestrial beings who lived for tens of thousands of years and once ruled humanity before vanishing? Beyond numbers, the list includes historically verified figures like Gilgamesh, king of Uruk, famously known from the epic bearing his name. This raises the question, if Gilgamesh was real, could the other kings have existed too? Or did myth intervene in history? Some scholars suggest the list was a political tool, dynasties legitimizing their rule by claiming divine descent. But this explanation fails to dispel the supernatural oddity of the numbers. And among this sea of immortal male rulers, one name stands out as an absolute paradox: Kubaba, the only woman to ever ascend the throne. A queen without noble birth, without divine lineage, yet founder of a dynasty that lasted nearly a century. Her story is as strange as any legendary king. Part 3. Kubaba, the lone queen among immortal kings. Amid a lengthy list of male kings reigning for millennia, Kubaba emerges as a silent yet striking exception. The only woman mentioned in the Sumerian king list, she was neither a princess, nor a god's daughter, nor the wife of a powerful king. According to ancient texts, Kubaba was once a tavern keeper, a humble profession close to the people. Yet somehow, mysteriously, she not only seized supreme power in Kish, but also established a dynasty that lasted nearly 100 years. Records don't elaborate on her rise, only confirming Kubaba was a queen, the one who made the foundations of Kish firm. In a patriarchal society like Sumer, what allowed a woman of no lineage to ascend the throne? Was she chosen by divine intervention, or was she part of an older order, a remnant from a matriarchal age that existed before history was rewritten? Kubaba left behind no massive structures like Ur-Nammu, no epic like Gilgamesh, and no inscriptions detailing her reign. Yet her presence in the most authoritative Sumerian text proves her real influence. Some theories suggest that in the post-flood period, when power among city-states was still fluid, people may have worshipped goddesses more than gods, accepting Kubaba as the embodiment of the divine feminine. Her name evokes connections to Sumerian deities like Inanna or Ninhursag. Strangely, after her, no other queens were recorded in Sumerian history, as if her reign was a singular interruption, after which history quickly reverted to the male-dominated norm. A leap of matriarchy in a sea of masculine rule. The silence of records makes Kubaba even more enigmatic. as if she wasn't just human, but a symbol of a force that once existed then was erased from collective memory. To this day, scholars debate was Kubaba a real figure, or a cultural construct embedded into historical texts. Either way, her presence challenges the patriarchal narrative of Sumer. And if she did exist, who was she? A brilliant woman who seized opportunity, a political instrument, or a being chosen by the gods to restore balance in the post-deluge chaos? This question becomes even more elusive when examining the fate of Sumerian women in general. Though bound by society, Sumerian women could own property, engage in trade, divorce, and serve as priestesses. Was Kubaba merely the tip of the iceberg, revealing a time when women didn't just exist, but shaped culture, ritual, and power? To better understand this, we must look at one of the best documented female figures in ancient literature, Enheduanna, priestess, poet, and humanity's first known storyteller. Part 4. Aratta, the lost city on the gods' map. As we trace the legacy of powerful women in ancient Sumer, like Kubaba and Enheduanna, we eventually encounter letters, though not of love or administration. These were epic letters between two city-states, Uruk and a mythical city, Aratta. Aratta appears in the epics of Enmerkar and Lugalbanda, two kings said to have founded Uruk's power. In these texts, Aratta is portrayed as a distant, fabulously wealthy city, its walls gleaming with precious metals and stones, its people skilled in sculpture, metallurgy, and weaving, possessing a culture rivaling the gods. Though Uruk was the political center, Enmerkar still had to negotiate, even threaten, to make Aratta submit demanding tributes like lapis lazuli, silver gold, and artisans. Aratta was never depicted as weak, but as a worthy rival, which leads scholars to ask, where was Aratta, and why is it absent from any archaeological map? For over a century, archaeologists have searched for traces of Aratta, from the Iranian plateau to the Caucasus, from Afghanistan's fringes to Pakistan's borders. Many ancient cities have been found, Shahri, Sokta, Jiroft, or sites in Elam, but none match the descriptions precisely. So what was Aratta, a real city, buried by catastrophe, a literary metaphor, or, as some bold theories suggest, a parallel dimension where gods once dwelled? Another intriguing theory proposes that Aratta was a spiritual mirror of Uruk, a metaphysical reflection of civilization's ideals. Between Uruk, representing mortal authority, and Aratta, symbolizing divinity, lies a struggle between what humans can control and what lies beyond understanding. As if the Sumerians, through these tales, weren't just recounting history, but embedding a spiritual map to explain the origin of power and wealth. Though its location remains unidentified, Aratta continues to haunt researchers due to its uncanny details. Inventories of gems, silks, metal tools, rituals and offerings, all described vividly. No one describes a mirage with such specificity unless it once existed or was passed down through deep collective memory. Could Aratta be a hidden city-state or a remnant of a pre-Sumerian civilization, perhaps more advanced, that disappeared after a global event? The fact that Aratta is linked to figures with divine connections, like Lugalbanda, who later fathered Gilgamesh, suggests this place wasn't just a city, but perhaps a training ground for demigods, a center of spiritual power where chosen individuals were trained to become legends. And among those legends, one man transcended myth, living on in human memory through a cuneiform epic, thousands of lines long, Gilgamesh, the seeker of immortality. Part 5. Gilgamesh, the one who crossed the line between legend and history. Around 2700 BCE, in the mighty city of Uruk on the banks of the Euphrates River, a man who was 2/3 divine and 1/3 mortal ruled. His name was Gilgamesh, a king recorded both in the Sumerian king list and in archaeological remnants. But what elevated his name beyond history was a nearly 3,000-line epic, the Epic of Gilgamesh. This was more than literature. It was humanity's earliest written legacy on death grief and the yearning for eternal life. In the story following the death of his closest companion, Enkidu, Gilgamesh, sets out to find the secret of immortality. His journey takes him through snowy forests, across a dead sea, and to the home of Utnapishtim, the flood survivor granted eternal life by the gods. From an invincible warrior king, Gilgamesh becomes a desperate soul fleeing death. And that image has echoed across millennia, from Sumerian temples to modern consciousness. What's astonishing is that the epic of Gilgamesh is not purely myth. His name appears in the king list as the 5th king of Uruk. Many cuneiform inscriptions from the city credit him with building massive walls around Uruk and restoring the temple of the goddess Inanna. These material traces confirm Gilgamesh was a real person, yet his life was mythologized, elevated into the archetype of the ancient hero. The epic teems with gods. Utu, the sun god Ishtar, the goddess of love and war. Gilgamesh doesn't just meet them. He debates, confronts, and at times defies them. The bond between humans and gods in this story isn't distant. It's intimate, tangible, as if the divine lived alongside humans, intervened in their fates, loved, punished, and rewarded. This is no longer mere literature. It's a record of a world where the boundaries between man and deity were still blurred. The epic ends in failure. After all his trials, Gilgamesh does not attain immortality. He returns home, realizing that only legacy is eternal, the walls, temples, and the memory of his journey. Yet the mystery lies not in the ending, but in the characters he meets. Enkidu, created from clay by the gods, and Utnapishtim, who survived a flood akin to Noah's. The tale repeats motifs from other cultures: catastrophic floods, trees of life, immortal beings, metaphysical quests. Are these collective memories of a forgotten era before recorded history? Or proof of a time when gods and humans coexisted, and if beings like Utnapishtim truly carried immortal blood? Who were they? Where did they come from? The answer may lie in the most ancient and controversial concept of Sumerian culture, the Anunnaki, beings described as offspring of heaven, gods who came from elsewhere. Part 6. Anunnaki. Those who fell from the sky. When Gilgamesh encountered gods during his quest, he didn't perceive a vast divide between divinity and humanity. They were present, living, loving, angered, and bestowing gifts. But one group in Sumerian culture defies the ordinary definition of gods. They are the Anunnaki, a name that has stirred both archaeology and speculative thought for decades. In ancient Sumerian texts, the Anunnaki are described as descendants of Anu, the supreme sky god, and the earth goddess Ki. The term Anuna means royal descendants from the heavens. They weren't mere deities. They were beings dispatched to Earth to manage humanity. Texts don't just speak of their power, but detail hierarchies and complex relationships between the Anunnaki gods, humans, and celestial bodies. This is no longer religion. It's a cosmological operating system. And when a system is too logical, people start to question, is this faith or a carefully hidden truth? The Anunnaki appear in inscriptions from Sumer to Akkad, Babylon, and Assyria. They weren't erased, but perpetuated through successive civilizations, as if their memory was too persistent to deny. Some modern scholars, like Zecharia Sitchin, propose a bold hypothesis. The Anunnaki were not gods. They were extraterrestrial beings from another planet who came to Earth hundreds of thousands of years ago. Their mission to mine resources and create humans as a genetically engineered labor force. Sitchin points to cuneiform texts that describe the Anunnaki creating humans from clay and divine blood, even referencing containers of life-birthing chambers, details that traditional archaeology struggles to explain. Though lacking physical evidence, this theory forces the world to reconsider the true role of ancient gods. If early civilizations like Sumer weren't purely human inventions, but the product of external intervention, then the entire concept of human history must be rewritten. However, not everyone subscribes to the alien theory. Some researchers argue the Anunnaki were personifications of natural laws: seasons, rivers, stars, life and death. Represented as gods with distinct personalities, the Sumerians viewed the cosmos as a spiritual ecosystem where invisible forces were anthropomorphized to be worshipped, supplicated, and feared. Whether literal beings or symbolic deities, one fact is clear: the Anunnaki profoundly shaped Mesopotamian culture. And if they truly descended to Earth, what legacy did they leave behind? The first complex writing system, advanced, astronomical, and mathematical knowledge. At this point, cracks begin to appear in the timeline of history, where an ancient civilization possessed intelligence seemingly too vast for a primitive people. We must now ask, where did the Sumerians learn all this? And why did they choose the number 60 as the cornerstone of their entire mathematical universe? Part 7. Knowledge beyond time. Base 60, cuneiform, and a language like no other. When you look at a watch and see 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, remember, this standard did not originate in modern times, but over 4,000 years ago in the valley between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. The Sumerians chose 60 as the foundation for their counting system. They didn't use the decimal system like most of the modern world, but a sexagesimal system, base 60. Why? Because 60 divides evenly by many small numbers, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, convenient for partitioning, measuring, and quantifying. Yet some argue this system wasn't invented by primitive minds, but passed down from a higher intelligence. They used it to calculate the solar year's length, and even to divide a circle into 360 degrees, a legacy that still defines geometry today. The question is, how did they know? In an age without telescopes or computers, how did they understand the sky as if it were an open book? Not only masters of mathematics, the Sumerians were also the creators of one of humanity's earliest writing systems, cuneiform. Initially, they drew simple pictographs on clay, but within a few centuries, this evolved into a system of over 700 abstract characters, complete with meanings, grammar, tenses, voices, and syntax. This wasn't a slow evolution. It happened so rapidly that researchers suspect Sumerian writing wasn't invented from scratch, but inherited from a now lost origin. Even more bizarre, the Sumerian language, known as Sumerian, resembles no other known language. It's unrelated to Indo-European Semitic, or convincingly to Dravidian. It's a linguistic island, a grammatical anomaly in the ocean of human tongues. When a civilization possesses a complex writing system, a complete numerical model, and an utterly unique linguistic structure, the idea that they thought it all up themselves becomes increasingly doubtful. Though the Sumerians disappeared millennia ago, their language and script were preserved by the Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians, as if their legacy was too foundational to replace. Cuneiform persisted for over 3,000 years, an extraordinary lifespan for any writing system. More importantly, Sumerian knowledge wasn't limited to clay tablets. They left star charts, agricultural calendars, and hydraulic management systems so refined that they regulated water flow between city-states. This enabled them to turn arid land into fertile granaries. They weren't just skywatchers, they were designers of reality. And if anything stunned scholars, it was the speed at which this knowledge emerged. How could they create such a complete civilization, almost fully formed with no visible infancy? Were the Anunnaki, with their power and intelligence, the ones who left a system of knowledge behind? Part 8. Cylinder seals a hidden civilization in a spiral. Picture a tiny stone cylinder just a few centimeters long. Yet when it's rolled over soft clay, it unveils an entire universe, filled with humans, deities, lions, eagles, sacred trees and altars, all carved with astonishing precision. These are cylinder seals among the most mysterious artifacts of Sumerian civilization. Far beyond their role as administrative stamps, they served ritual, cultural, and possibly symbolic purposes in the ancient spiritual worldview. To the Sumerians, sealing a tablet wasn't just marking ownership, it was a cosmic act. Each impression reflected the alignment of gods and mortals, nature and society, life and death. Seals have been uncovered from all social levels, from merchants and priests to kings, proving They were not mere tools, but gateways into a universe where every being had a soul, and every act echoed in the cosmos. And the most recurring motif, winged beings engaging with humans, Anunnaki, or mere religious symbols, we don't know for certain. But it's clear that these seals do not follow decorative logic. They follow ritual composition, where gods stand higher, humans lower, and between them lie sacred trees' altars or images of light. Some seals depict humanoids wearing space-like helmets, large eyes holding instruments resembling measuring tools. Others show winged human figures, granting kings scepters of power or rings of destiny. Perhaps these are just symbols, but perhaps, as some alternative researchers suggest, these seals record actual interactions between the Sumerians and beings from beyond our world. Remarkably, these cylinder seals were not limited to Sumer. They've been found in Syria, Anatolia, and even deep within the Iranian plateau, suggesting a visual code that transcended cultural boundaries and spread beyond a single kingdom, a connected network using not words, but images. Today, thousands of cylinder seals are stored in museums and archives around the world. Scholars attempt to decode their symbols, from the seal's direction of roll to the positioning of elements within the composition. But the deeper the decoding goes, the deeper the mystery becomes. Some seals don't depict rituals. They depict maps. They outline celestial diagrams, star paths, even what appears to be a solar system, with an unfamiliar planet on the edge. While there is no conclusive evidence yet, the question remains, why would an ancient civilization care about things they supposedly couldn't see? These tiny seals may be ancient hard drives where Sumerians encoded memory, knowledge, and belief into stone. And if these are maps back to our origins, then they may also be doors to a bigger question. How far did the Sumerians go? Did they reach beyond Mesopotamia to form a vast trade network linking the earliest civilizations? Part 9. The Sumerian trade network routes through time. In modern imagination, ancient civilizations are often seen as isolated, self-contained, interacting only occasionally with neighbors. But Sumer was different. The Sumerians didn't just build temples and invent writing, they were traders, and they didn't trade within their own city-states. They expanded across the Middle East, reaching the Iranian plateau, the Arabian Peninsula. From cuneiform clay tablets, researchers have uncovered names of strange lands: Dilmun, Magan, Meluha. Dilmun may be modern-day Bahrain, known for its rich copper. Magan, land of shipbuilders and gems, may refer to Oman. Meluha, source of ivory, ebony, incense and lapis lazuli, possibly points to the Indus Valley or Ethiopia. This was not just domestic commerce. This was a transcontinental trade network, a great hub with Sumer as both origin and recipient of materials, craftsmanship, and ideologies from distant cultures. What's astonishing is that the Sumerians achieved this in the 3rd millennium BCE, over 4,000 years ago. They didn't yet have robust wheels like the Romans, nor geographic maps like the medieval world. Yet they ran a fully functional logistics system, waterways, via the Tigris and Euphrates sea routes, through the Persian Gulf, and land routes across the Syrian desert and Iranian highlands. Items found in burial sites, like lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, seashells from India, or wine jars from Anatolia, prove the existence of a vibrant ancient world connected through trade routes. But the strange thing is, how did they know of these far-off lands? How did they find them, negotiate, and build trust across hundreds of miles without GPS or radio? Did they use some kind of spiritual navigation chart? Ancient energy lines they simply followed? Or did the gods themselves, through rituals, symbols and seals, guide them? It wasn't just gold, copper and fine woods. What the Sumerians truly exchanged was knowledge. Through every trade route, they exported writing, religious symbols, architectural models, and crafting techniques to distant lands. In return, they absorbed cultural influences, blending, transforming, and reinterpreting them into unique Sumerian forms. Thus, when we look at sites in the Indus Valley, Elam, or even ancient Egypt, we see strange signs, cuneiform-like scripts, ritual artifacts resembling Sumerian models, and brewing or metallurgy techniques with Mesopotamian traits. This was no longer trade, this was intellectual migration. And if Sumerian merchants carried divine symbols in their journeys, then they were not just traders, but civilization messengers. Yet suddenly, it all ended. The roots went silent, city-states declined. The once central hub of Sumerian civilization disappeared abruptly. The final question is, why did such a great civilization collapse in the dark? Part 10. The disappearance of Sumer, the gods' final riddle. By the end of the 3rd millennium BCE, in the fertile plains between the Tigris and Euphrates, a civilization that had built sky-reaching ziggurats, invented writing, and connected the ancient world, gradually went silent. No great war was recorded, no devastating plague, no overwhelming natural disaster. Yet within a few centuries, Sumerian cities like Lagash-Eridu weakened one by one. The Sumerian language vanished from daily speech. Cuneiform was replaced by Akkadian. The Sumerians, like grains of sand in the wind, dissolved into the flow of history. Historians call this process Akkadianization, when northern peoples migrated south and dominated politically and militarily. But the real reason isn't that simple. A civilization with such advanced organization, knowledge, and art could not have fallen just due to invasion. The question remains, what really happened? One theory is climate change. Paleoclimatologists believe that around 2200 BCE, a major drought hit the Near East, lasting nearly 300 years, severely lowering the water levels of the Euphrates and Tigris. The Sumerians' sophisticated irrigation system, their agricultural lifeline, collapsed. Soil became salty, crops failed, people migrated. City-states fell into civil wars over resources. When external forces like the Akkadians, later Amorites and Babylonians rose to power, Sumerian cities were already crumbling from within. But that's only part of the story. Why under the same conditions did other regions like Assyria survive and even flourish? Perhaps Sumer didn't just collapse from weather or war. Perhaps they reached a certain civilizational threshold, a cultural failsafe that once crossed required everything to be erased. A knowledge too advanced, too dangerous, too hard to control, leading their very teachers to withdraw what they had given. After the Sumerians vanished, no one fully inherited their culture. Sumerian inscriptions became relics, preserved but no longer understood. By the time modern civilization rediscovered them in the 19th century, everything had been buried under layers of time. So what made them so unique? Perhaps it was their balance of intellect, religion, and symbolism. Sumer was the only civilization where gods were not just worshipped but also lived with, ruled with, and signed cosmic treaties on clay tablets. They didn't just record history, they created it as ritual, and when that ritual ended, the curtain fell, leaving humanity with fragments that no longer fit together. But precisely because of that, Sumer never truly disappeared. They live on in how we measure time, in the characters etched in clay, in the spiral of the ziggurat, in the eternal question, who really taught us how to begin? Over 4,000 years have passed, and the Sumerian civilization remains an unresolved mystery. We've just journeyed through 10 of its most fascinating enigmas, from the towering ziggurat of Ur to the king list with impossible reigns, the extraordinary Queen Kubaba, and the elusive city of Aratta. Their legacy reveals astonishing advancements in language, mathematics, trade, religion, and art, a level of sophistication far beyond their time. Yet their very brilliance raises countless questions. How did the Sumerians develop a base 60 number system, create cuneiform, one of the first scripts, and maintain a vast transcontinental trade network? Why did such a pioneering civilization vanish so suddenly? Were their first kings mythical, or do they hint at supernatural truths embedded in their culture? And what was the true role of the Anunnaki? Mere religious figures, or something more? This video has offered a panoramic view of a great civilization, but also opened deep gaps in our understanding of human history. Looking back on this journey, we're left to wonder, Are we getting closer to uncovering the truth hidden behind the dawn of civilization? Or have we only scratched the surface of a much larger picture? Will the mysteries of the Sumerians ever be solved? Or will they continue to challenge the imagination and knowledge of humankind for generations to come?